Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Bible Hour. An hour of reading the Bible. Brought to you by Park End Presbyterian Church, Cardiff. We have made it to day 25. That's 25 hours of Bible reading. Good evening, Park End Wingman at my 3. If you could just move to my 4, that would be better for me because I'm left-handed. Good evening, Neil Whittington. Good evening, Sam Whittington. I have a feeling Chris Henry's going to tell me to ever so slightly dim the lights. In fact, I'll preempt her. Puppy is asleep. Puppy wakes at 9:15. Okay. Good evening, Sue Roberts. Welcome to the Bible Hour. I'm a little bit dark now. All right, that'll do. Okay, let us grab our Bibles. We have made it to Deuteronomy Chapter 18, and we begin in 4 minutes' time. It has just started raining. In Cardiff. In this part of Cardiff. Good evening, Petit Bois. Good evening, Chris Williams and Cara Williams. Raining in Caerphilly. Good evening, Phil Tamlin. I don't think you needed to retract the first time, Sam. That was pretty clear. We will begin in 3 minutes' time. Day 25. Ooh, Richard Barrett here. The Park End admin tonight is not Richard Barrett. It is not Neil Whittington. The Park End administrator is the person who is giving up their evening tonight is Nick Hawkins. Thank you very much. Been raining here for half an hour. If you could make your way to Deuteronomy 18, the final book of Moses. Hey. Good evening, Chris Henry. How is the lighting? Does it need to go a touch lighter? Close up. We have 1 minute before we begin reading Deuteronomy chapter 18. All good. I am in the t-shirt that my wife deems repulsive. But what does she know about fashion? What does she know? Day 25. What do we learn about Jesus? What do we learn about church? Pop star backlight. That's as low as it goes. She's right as a park end admin, laying into the t-shirt. It's not the t-shirt, it's the color. Okay, it is 9 o'clock. If you want to know why we ask questions about Jesus and church, because they're incredibly important questions and they keep us from veering off on tangents, which there's a place for, but not really. The Bible is written about a person and his bride. Thank you, Richard Barrett. So we have made our way to Deuteronomy chapter 18. Grab your jinx, grab your cheese, grab your burgers, potato, whatever it is. Pull up a chair and let's begin. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Gifts for the priests and the Levites, as Moses continues preaching and prepping them to enter heaven on earth. Remember that the Levitical priests, that is, the whole of the tribe of Levi, will receive no allotment of land among the other tribes in Israel. Instead, the priests and Levites will eat from the special gifts given to the Lord, for that is their share. They will have no land of their own among the Israelites. The Lord himself is their special possession. What an honor, just as he promised them. These are the parts the priests may claim. These are the parts the priests may claim as their share from the cattle, sheep, and goats that the people bring as offerings: the shoulder, the cheeks, and the stomach. You must also give to the priest the first share of the grain, the new wine, the olive oil, and the wool at shearing time. For the Lord your God chose the tribe of Levi out of all of your tribes to minister in the Lord's name forever. Suppose a Levite chooses to move from his town in Israel, wherever he is living, to the place the Lord chooses for worship. He may minister there in the name of the Lord his God, just like all his fellow Levites who are serving the Lord there. He may eat his share of the sacrifices and offerings, even if he also receives support from his family. A call to holy living. When you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you, be careful not to imitate the detestable customs of the nations living there. For example, never sacrifice your son or daughter as a burnt offering. And do not let your people practice fortune telling, or use sorcery, or interpret omens, or engage in witchcraft, or cast spells, or function as mediums or psychics, or call forth the spirits of the dead. Anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord. It is because the other nations have done these detestable things that the Lord your God will drive them out ahead of you. But you must be blameless before the Lord your God. The nations you are about to displace consult sorcerers and fortune tellers, but the Lord your God forbids you to do such things. One day at Park End, I'll do a meeting on my experiences in the valleys with occultist stuff. It's a fascinating thing. True and false prophets. Moses continued, "The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your fellow Israelites. You must listen to him. For this is what you yourselves requested of the Lord your God when you were assembled at Mount Sinai. You said, 'Don't let us hear the voice of the Lord our God anymore, or see this blazing fire, for we will die.' Then the Lord said to me, 'What they have said is right. I will raise up a prophet like you from among their fellow Israelites. I will put my words in his mouth, and he will tell the people everything I command him. I will personally deal with anyone who will not listen to the messages the prophet proclaims on my behalf. But any prophet who falsely claims to speak in my name, or who speaks in the name of another God, must die.' But you may wonder, how will we know whether or not a prophecy is from the Lord? If the prophet speaks in the Lord's name, but his prediction does not happen or come true, you will know that the Lord did not give that message. That prophet has spoken without my authority and need not be feared." Deuteronomy Chapter 19. Cities of Refuge. When the Lord your God destroys the nations whose land he is giving you, you will take over their land and settle in their towns and homes. Then you must set apart 3 cities of refuge in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Survey the territory and divide the land the Lord your God is giving you into 3 districts, with one of these cities in each district. Then anyone who has killed someone can flee to one of the cities of refuge for safety. If someone kills another person unintentionally without previous hostility, the slayer may be free to any of these cities to live in for safety. Sorry, the slayer may flee. I thought that didn't make sense. To any of these cities to live in safety. For example, suppose someone goes into the forest with a neighbor to cut wood, and suppose one of them swings an axe to chop down a tree, and the axe head flies off the handle, killing the other person. In such cases, the slayer may flee to one of the cities of refuge to live in safety. If the distance to the nearest city of refuge is too far, an enraged avenger might be able to chase down and kill the person who caused the death. Then the slayer would die unfairly, since he had shown hostility towards the person. He had never shown hostility towards the person who died. That is why I am commanding you to set aside 3 cities of refuge. If the Lord your God enlarges your territory, as he swore to your ancestors, and gives you all the land he promised them, you must designate 3 additional cities of refuge. He will give you this land if you are careful to obey all the commands I have given you, if you always love the Lord your God and walk in his ways. That way, you will prevent the death of innocent people in the land the Lord your God is giving you as your special possession. You will not be held responsible for the death of innocent people. But suppose someone is hostile towards a neighbor and deliberately ambushes and murders him and then flees to one of the cities of refuge. In that case, the elders of the murderer's hometown must send agents to the city of refuge to bring him back and hand him over to the dead person's avenger to be put to death. Do not feel sorry for that murderer. Purge from Israel the guilt of murdering innocent people. Then all will go well with you. Concern for justice. Verse 14. When you arrive in the land the Lord your God is giving you as your special possession, you must never steal anyone's land by moving the boundary markers your ancestors set up to mark their property. You must not convict anyone of a crime on the testimony of only one witness. The facts of the case must be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If a malicious witness comes forward and accuses someone of a crime, then both the accuser and accused must appear before the Lord by coming to the priests and judges in office at that time. The judges must investigate the case thoroughly. If the accuser has brought false charges against his fellow Israelite, you must impose on the accuser the sentence he intended for the other person. In this way, you will purge such evil from among you. Then the rest of the people will hear about it and be too afraid to do such an evil thing. You must show no pity for the guilty. Your rule should be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Deuteronomy Chapter 20. Regulations concerning war. When you go out to fight your enemies, and you face horses and chariots and an army greater than your own, do not be afraid. That's Monday morning for lots of people. The Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, is with you. When you prepare for battle, the priest must come forward to speak to the troops. He will say to them, "Listen to me, all you men of Israel. Do not be afraid as you go out to fight your enemies today. Do not lose heart or panic or tremble before them. For the Lord your God is going with you. He will fight for you against your enemies, and he will give you victory." That is a belter of a verse, that one, isn't it? Then the officers of the army must address the troops and say, "Has anyone here just built a new house but not yet dedicated it? If so, you may go home. You may be killed in the battle, and someone else would dedicate your house. Has anyone here just planted a vineyard but not yet eaten of its fruit? If so, you may go home. You might die in battle, and someone else would eat the fruit. Has anyone here just become engaged to a woman, but not yet married her? Well, you may go home and get married. You might die in the battle, and then someone else would marry her." Then the officers will also say, "Is anyone here afraid or worried? If you are, you may go home before you frighten anyone else." When the officers have finished speaking to their troops, they will appoint the unit commanders. As you approach a town to attack it, you must first offer its people terms for peace. If they accept your terms and open the gates to you, then all the people inside will serve you in forced labor. But if they refuse to make peace and prepare to fight, you must attack the town. When the Lord your God hands the town over to you, use your swords to kill every man in the town. But you may keep for yourselves all the women, children, livestock, and other plunder. You may enjoy the plunder from your enemies that the Lord your God has given you. But the instructions apply only to distant towns. Do not to the towns of nations in the land you will enter. In those towns that the Lord your God is giving you as a special possession, destroy every living thing. You must completely destroy the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, just as the Lord your God had commanded you. This will prevent the people of the land from teaching you to imitate their detestable customs in the worship of their gods, which would cause you to sin deeply against the Lord your God. It's a bit like Sermon on the Mount when Jesus is talking about fighting sin. He's like, don't even look at it. Just pluck it out, chop it off. Don't even look. That's Jesus' advice for combating like sexual sins, isn't it? Just don't even look. People are like, do you want to see something more? He's like, no, don't look. Once you do that, the window of everything will just open and you'll tumble down. Don't even look. Just completely destroy the gods there. When you are attacking a town and the war drags on, you must not cut down the trees with your axes. You may eat the fruit, but do not cut down the trees. Are the trees your enemies that you should attack them? You may only cut down trees that you know are not valuable for food. Use them to make equipment you need to attack the enemy town until it falls. Deuteronomy Chapter 1. 1:21. Cleansing for unsolved murder. They cover everything in the promised land. When you are in the land the Lord your God is giving you, someone may be found murdered in a field, and you don't know who committed the murder. In such a case, your elders and judges must measure the distance from the site of the crime to the nearby towns. When the nearest town has been determined, that town's elders must select from the herd a heifer that has never been trained or yoked to a plough. They must lead it down to a valley that has not been ploughed or planted and that has a stream running through it. There in the valley, they must break the heifer's neck. Then the Levitical priests must step forward, for the Lord your God has chosen them to minister before him and to pronounce blessings in the Lord's names. They are to decide all legal and criminal cases. The elders of the town must wash their hands over the heifer whose neck was broken. Then they must say, our hands did not shed this person's blood, nor did we see it happen. Oh, forgive your people, Israel, whom you have redeemed. Do not charge your people with the guilt of murdering an innocent person. Then they will be absolved of the guilt of this person's blood. By allowing these instructions, you will do what is right in the Lord's sight and will cleanse the guilt of murder from your community. Marriage to a captive woman. Verse 10. Suppose you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God hands them over to you, and you take some of them as captives. And suppose you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you are attracted to her, and you want to marry her. If this happens, you may take her to your home, where she must shave her head, cut her nails, and change the clothes she was wearing when she was captured. She will stay in your home, but let her mourn for her father and mother for a full month. Then you may marry her, and you will be her husband, and she will be your wife. But if you marry her and she does not please you, you must let her go free. You may not sell her or treat her as a slave, for you have humiliated her. What is that about? Do you remember the males had to circumcise as like cutting off from the old life? In fact, the very thing that is symbolic of producing life, it's like we're cutting that off because we found new life. And when the Nazarites are dedicated to the Lord, they don't want to cut off that life so everything grows long. And here the woman has to literally display that she is turning away from that old life. Rights of the firstborn. Suppose a man has two wives, but he loves one and not the other, and both have given him sons. And suppose the firstborn son is the son of the wife he does not love. When the man divides his inheritance, he may not give the larger inheritance to his younger son, the son of the wife he loves, as if he were the firstborn son. He must recognize the rights of his oldest son, the son of the wife he does not love, by giving him a double portion. He is the first son of the father's virility, and the rights of the firstborn belong to him. Dealing with a rebellious son. Suppose a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey his father or mother, even though they discipline him. In such a case, the father and mother must take the son to the elders as they hold court at the town gate. The parents must say to the elders, "This son of ours is stubborn and rebellious, and he refuses to obey. He's a glutton and a drunkard." Then all the men of his town must stone him to death. In this way you will purge this evil from among you, and all Israel will hear about it and be afraid. Now that is the same in modern day church. If a church member is refusing after multiple times, multiple warnings, they still want to act as a child of death. They don't want to submit to any authority, any law of God. It's like, get them out. Just get them out. Treat them as non-Christians until something changes. Various regulations. If someone has committed a crime worthy of death and is executed and hung on a tree, the body must not remain hanging from the tree overnight. You must bury the body that same day, for anyone who is hung is cursed in the sight of God. In this way you will prevent the defilement of the land the Lord your God is giving you as your special possession. Park End Admin. Please can you put verse 23 up in, we'll go for the King James or New King James, because verse 23, you can't understand Calvary or the resurrection without knowing that law. Which is why if Jesus always says, if you want to get to know me, learn Moses. Deuteronomy Chapter 22. If you see your neighbor's ox or sheep or goat wandering away, don't ignore your responsibility. Take it back to its owner. If its owner does not live nearby or you don't know who the owner is, take it to your place and keep it until the owner comes looking for it. Then you must return it. Do the same if you find your neighbor's donkey, clothing, or anything else in your neighbor's losses. Don't ignore your responsibility in COVID-19 lockdown. If you see that your neighbor's donkey or ox has collapsed on the road, do not look the other way. Go and help your neighbor get it back on its feet. A woman must not put on men's clothing, and a man must not wear a woman's clothing. Anyone who does this is detestable in the sight of the Lord your God. If you happen to find, and we're not talking about fancy dress stuff here, we're talking about willfully hating the structure and biology that the Lord has given you in his image. If you happen to find a bird's nest in a tree or on the ground, and there are young ones or eggs in it, with the mother sitting in the nest, do not take the mother with the young. You may take the young, but let the mother go, so that you may prosper and enjoy a long life. When you build a new house, you must build a railing around the edge of its flat roof. That way, you will not be considered guilty of murder if someone falls from the roof. It's a flat roof. You must not plant any other crop between the rows of your vineyard. If you do, you are forbidden to use either the grapes from the vineyard or the other crop. You must not plow with an ox and a donkey harnessed together. You must not wear clothing made of wool or linen woven together. You must put 4 tassels on the hem of the cloak of which you cover yourself on the front, back, and sides. What is that about? The Lord's like, don't even give a picture of mixing stuff together. You have come out of Egypt. We're all about heaven now. So don't even give little pictures of mixing stuff. Do not even let your plants look mixed. Parkend admin, have you got that verse yet? Verse 13. Suppose a man marries a woman, but after sleeping with her, he turns against her and publicly accuses her of a shameful conduct, saying, "When I married this woman, I discovered she was not a virgin." Then the woman's father and mother must bring the proof of her virginity to the elders as they hold court at the town gate. Her father must say to them, "I gave my daughter to this man to be his wife, and now he has turned against her. He has accused her of shameful conduct, saying, I discovered that your daughter was not a virgin. But here is the proof of my daughter's virginity." Then they must spread her bedsheet before the elders. The elders must then take the man and punish him. They must also fine him 100 pieces of silver, which he must pay to the woman's father because he publicly accused the Virgin of Israel of shameful conduct. The woman will then remain the man's wife, and he may never divorce her. But to suppose that the man's accusations are true, and he can show that he was not a virgin, that she was not a virgin, the woman must be taken to the door of her father's home, and then the men in the town must stone her to death, because she has committed a disgraceful crime in Israel by being promiscuous while living in her parents' home. In this way, you will purge this evil from among you. Park end admin. Full stop. Verse 22. If a man is discovered committing adultery, both he and the woman must die. In this way, you will purge Israel of such evil. Suppose a man meets a young woman and a virgin who is engaged to be married, and he has sexual intercourse with her. If this happens within a town, you must take both of them to the gates of that town and stone them to death. The woman is guilty because she did not scream for help. The man must die because he violated another man's wife. In this way, you will purge this evil from among you. But if the man meets the engaged woman out in the country and he rapes her, then only the man must die. Do nothing to the young woman. She has committed no crime worthy of death. She is as innocent as a murder victim. Since the man raped her out in the country, it must be assumed that she screamed, but then there was no one there to rescue her. Suppose a man has intercourse with a young woman who is a virgin, but is not engaged to be married. If they are discovered, he must pay her father 50 pieces of silver. Then he must marry the young woman because he violated her, and he may divorce her as long as he lives. And man must not marry his father's former wife, for this would violate his father. There would be a lot of people dying today if these laws were in force. Well, that's an interesting point, Petit Bois. So there's 2 things there. Number one, because that is an important point. Number one, that it shows how serious church discipline is if you are put out of the place of life and you enter the territory of death, which is the world. Also, 150,000 people die every day, and they are judged by the living God. I mean, these things still happen today. Unrepentant, unforgiven sin, according to the Bible, leads to judgment and death. His body shall not remain, but for he that is hanged is accursed of God. Yeah, so he that is hanged is accursed of God. So cursed is he who hangs on a tree. I mean, Jesus hung on a tree, cursed. in the place of sinners. It is a sobering and quite astonishing. Deuteronomy chapter 23. Regulations concerning worship. If a man's testicles are crushed or his penis is cut off, he may not be admitted to the assembly of God. If a person is illegitimate by birth, neither he nor his descendants for 10 generations may be admitted to the assembly of the Lord. No Ammonite or Moabite or any of their descendants for 10 generations may be admitted to the assembly of the Lord. These nations did not welcome you with food and water when you came out of Egypt. Instead, they hired Balaam, son of Beor from Pethor and a distant Aram Naharaim to curse you. But the Lord your God refused to listen to Balaam. He turned the intended curse into a blessing because the Lord your God loves you. As long as you live, you must never promote the welfare and prosperity of the Ammonites and Moabites. Do not detest the Edomites or the Egyptians, because the Edomites are your relatives, and you lived as foreigners among the Egyptians. The third generation of Edomites and Egyptians may enter the assembly of the Lord. When you go to war against your enemies, be sure to stay away from anything that is impure. Any man who becomes ceremonially defiled because of a nocturnal emission must leave the camp and stay away all day. Toward evening he must bathe himself, and at sunset he may return to the camp. You may have a designated area outside the camp where you can go and relieve yourself. Each of you must have a spade as part of your equipment. Whenever you relieve yourself, dig a hole with the spade and cover the excrement. Now, this is great. Why? Verse 14. The camp must be holy, for the Lord your God moves around your camp to protect you and to defeat your enemies. Clean up the poo. Just clean it up. Why? Because he's walking around and the living God can't go treading in poo. Isn't that a picture of holiness? He cannot even tread in poo. I bet some people here have never seen that before. Jesus does not like stepping in poo because he's holy, body, mind, and soul. The camp must be holy, for the Lord your God moves around your camp to protect you and defeat your enemies. Yeah, he must not see any shameful thing among you, or he will turn away from you. If slaves should escape from their masters and take refuge with you, you must not hand them over to their masters. Let them live among you in any town they choose, and do not oppress them. No Israelite, whether man or woman, may become a temple prostitute. When you are bringing an offering to fulfill a vow, you must not bring to the house of the Lord your God any offering from the earrings of a prostitute, whether a man or a woman, for both are detestable to the Lord your God. Do not charge interest on the loans you make to a fellow Israelite, whether you loan money or food or anything else. You may charge interest to foreigners, but you may not charge interest to Israelites, so that the Lord your God may bless you in everything you do in the land you are about to enter and occupy. That's interesting, isn't it? It's like church, all right, if pagans want to deal in a pagan way and be nasty with interest and things, all right, do it, fine. But within church, deal more fairly. When you make a vow to the Lord your God, be prompt in fulfilling whatever you promised him. For the Lord your God demands that you will promptly fulfill vows, and you will be guilty of sin, or you will be guilty of sin. However, it is not a sin to refrain from making a vow. But once you have voluntarily made a vow, be careful to fulfill your promise to the Lord your God. Hold on, Petty, what? Another, men prostitutes in those times. Yeah. Hey, North Star, welcome. However, it is not a sin to refrain from making a vow, but once you have voluntarily made a vow, be careful to fulfill your promise to the Lord your God. When you enter your neighbor's vineyard, you may eat your fill of grapes, but you must not carry any away in a basket. And when you enter your neighbor's field of grain, you may pluck the heads of grains with your hand, but you must not harvest it with a sickle. Deuteronomy Chapter 4, and we are at the halfway mark, so take 30 seconds. Shall I reread the past 4 or 5 chapters for North Star? Deuteronomy Chapter 24. Suppose a man marries a woman, but she does not please him. Having discovered something wrong with her, he writes a document of divorce, hands it to her, and sends her away from his house. When she leaves his house, she is free to marry another man. But if the second husband also turns against her, writes a document of divorce, hands it to her, and sends her away, or if he dies, the first husband may not marry her again, for she has been defiled. That would be detestable to the Lord. You must not bring guilt upon the land the Lord your God is giving you as a special possession. Stop going backwards. Pictures everywhere. Don't return to Egypt. Don't go back. A newly married man must not be drafted into the army or be given any other official responsibilities. He must be free to spend 1 year at home, bringing happiness to the wife he has married. 1 year at home for male newlyweds. How about that, Boris? I think I got 7 days, if that. It is wrong to take a set of millstones, or even just the upper millstone, as security for a loan, for the owner uses it to make a living. If anyone kidnaps a fellow Israelite and treats him as a slave or sells him, the kidnapper must die. In this way, you will purge the evil from among you. In all cases involving serious skin diseases, be careful to follow the instructions of the Levitical priests. Obey all the commands I have given them. Remember what the Lord your God did to Miriam as you were coming from Egypt. If you lend anything to your neighbor, do not enter his house to pick up the item he is giving as security. You must wait outside while he goes in and brings it out to you. If your neighbor is poor and gives you his cloak as a security for a loan, do not keep the cloak overnight. Return the cloak to its owner by sunset so he can stay warm through the night and bless you. And the Lord your God will count you as righteous. Never take advantage of poor and destitute laborers, whether they are fellow Israelites or foreigners living in your towns. You must pay them their wages each day before sunset, because they are poor and are counting on it. If you don't, they might cry out to the Lord against you, and it would be counted against you as sin. Parents must not be put to death for the sins of their children, nor children for the sins of their parents. Those deserving to die must be put to death for their own crimes. True justice must be given to foreigners living among you and to orphans, and you must never accept a widow's garment as a security for her debt. Always remember that you were slaves in Egypt and that the Lord God redeemed you from your slavery. That is why I have given you this command. Church is great for poor people. says Anna Blackham, which is why we have asked Liz Blackham to come and talk about helping poor people when we're out of lockdown for a Sunday evening special. When you are harvesting your crops and forget to bring in a bundle of grain from your field, don't go back to get it. Leave it for the foreigners, orphans, and widows. Then the Lord your God will bless you in all you do. When you beat the olives from your olive trees, don't go over the boughs twice. Leave the remaining olives for the foreigners, orphans, and widows. When you gather the grapes in your vineyard, don't glean the vines after they are picked. Leave the remaining grapes for the foreigners, orphans, and widows. Remember that you were slaves in the land of Egypt. That is why I am giving you this command. You were nothing. I rescued you. So go and rescue the people. It is amazing how many Bible colleges mention next to nothing that pastors should be doing good works for people and encouraging others to look after people. In fact, one preacher in my circles famously said, I didn't go to Bible college to run a soup kitchen, meaning all I ever want to do is study the Word of God and preach, preach, preach. I don't get that when I read Moses. I see both. Deuteronomy Chapter 25. Suppose two people take a dispute to court, and the judges declare that one is right and the other is wrong. Diane, I am appalled. I probably shouldn't have read verse 1 and then quoted you being appalled. If the person in the wrong is sentenced to be flogged, the judge must command him to lie down and be beaten in his presence with the number of lashes appropriate to the crime, but never give more than 40 lashes, for the 40 lashes would publicly humiliate your neighbor. You must not muzzle an ox to keep it from eating as it treads out the grain. If two brothers are living together on the same property and one of them dies without his son, his widow may not be married to anyone from outside the family. Instead, her husband's brother should marry her and have intercourse with her to fulfill the duties of a brother-in-law. By the way, if the Latin-speaking chap was here yesterday about contraception and that, Onan and Tamar in Genesis 48 is about securing safety for women's future and inheritance of land, isn't it? Should you be listening out there, my friend, read Genesis, I think it's 48, Tamar and Onan. Verse 6, the first son she bears to him will be considered the son of the dead brother, so that his name will not be forgotten in Israel. But if the man refuses to marry his brother's widow, she must go to the town gate and say to the elders assembled there, my husband's brother refuses to preserve his brother's name in Israel. He refuses to fulfill the duties of a brother-in-law by marrying me. The elders of the town will then summon him and talk with him. If he still refuses and says, I don't want to marry her, the widow must walk over to him in the presence of the elders, pull his sandals from his foot, and spit in his face. Then she must declare, this is what happens to a man who refuses to provide his brother with children. Ever afterward in Israel, his family will be referred to as the family of the man whose sandal was pulled off. If two Israelite men get into a fight and the wife of one tries to rescue her husband by grabbing the testicles of the other man, you must cut off her hand. Show her no pity. You must use accurate scales when you weigh out merchandise, and you must use full and honest measures. Yes, always used honest weights and measures so that you may enjoy a long life in the land that the Lord God is giving you. All who cheat with dishonest weights and measures are detestable to the Lord your God. Sue Roberts, harsh. Remember, though, children, inheritance being secure, and the future of church bound up with the priest who connects them to the high priest. It's quite a serious thing to go, messing that stuff up. Jesus wants his church. The punishments in that ancient church were short and sharp, but these days people get locked up and messed up for years and years. We see much more barbaric today, says Anna Blackham. And I do think church discipline and putting people out of the church is as dreadful of being instantly killed. Never forget what the Amalekites did for you as you came from Egypt. They attacked you when you were exhausted and weary, and they struck down those who were straggling behind. They had no fear of God. Therefore, when the Lord your God has given you rest from all your enemies in the land he has given you as a special possession, you must destroy the Amalekites and erase their memory from under heaven. Never forget this. Correct, or petit bois. We are into the third. Take a minute, grab a drink, make some notes, eat some cheese, get some energy. Deuteronomy Chapter 6. Mac Nayapala, hey, McDonald's here. Dishonest scales are common among all smiths. Dishonest scales are common among small businessmen in my country, Malawi. That's why Moses is amazing. I tell you what, when we get to Joshua, countries that have had unfair rulers oppress them, they're going to love the chapters of Joshua. People like us who think we're persecuted because Boris said we can't drive to walk the dog, we're like, Joshua's a bit iffy, isn't it? Tune in for Joshua, my Malawian friend. Deuteronomy chapter 26, harvest offerings and tithes. When you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you as a special possession, and you have conquered it and settled there, put some of the first produce from each crop you harvest into a basket and bring it to the designated place of worship, the place the Lord your God chooses for his name to be honored. Go to the priest in charge at the time and say to him, with this gift I acknowledge to the Lord your God that I have entered the land he swore to our ancestors he would give us. The priest will then take the basket from your hand and set it before the altar of the Lord your God. You must then say in the presence of the Lord your God, my ancestor Jacob was a wandering Aramean who went to live as a foreigner in Egypt. His family arrived few in number, but in Egypt they become large and a mighty nation. When the Egyptians oppressed and humiliated us by making us their slaves, we cried out to the Lord, the God of our ancestors. He heard our cries and saw our hardship, toil, and oppression. It's like the psalm, isn't it? I cried out to the Lord, and he heard my call for mercy. So the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a strong hand and powerful arm, with overwhelming terror and with miraculous signs and wonders. He brought us to this place and gave us the land flowing with milk and honey. And now, O Lord, I have brought you the first portion of the harvest you have given me from the ground. Then place the produce before the Lord your God and bow to the ground in worship before him. Afterward, you may go and celebrate because of all the good things the Lord your God has given to you and to your household. Remember to include the Levites and the foreigners living among you in the celebration. Every third year, you must offer a special tithe of your crops. In this year of the special tithe, you must give your tithes to the Levites, foreigners, orphans, and widows, so that they will have enough to eat in your towns. Then you must declare in the presence of the Lord your God, I have taken the sacred gift from my house and have given it to the Levites, foreigners, orphans, and widows, just as you have commanded me. I have not violated or forgotten any of your commands. I have not eaten any of it while in mourning. I have not handled it while I was ceremonially unclean, and I have not offered any of it to the dead. I have obeyed the Lord my God and have done everything you have commanded me. Now look down from your holy dwelling place in heaven and bless your people Israel in the Lord, in the land that you swore to your ancestors to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. Today, the Lord your God has commanded you to obey all these decrees and regulations, so be careful to obey them wholeheartedly. You have declared today that the Lord is your God, and you have promised to walk in his ways and to obey his decrees, commands, and regulations, and to do everything he tells you. I think we should do that every day. This day, we declare him, Jesus Christ, to be our Lord and God, and we will walk in his ways and obey his decrees, commands, and regulations and do everything he tells us to do. We do that every day and then die one day. I think that's going to be the best life ever, as proved by Jesus. Give us this day. Forget about tomorrow. Give us this day. The Lord has declared to you that you are his people, his own special treasure, just as he promised, and that you must obey all his commands. If you do, he will set you high above all other nations he has made. Then you will receive praise, honor, and renown. You will be a nation that is holy to the Lord your God, just as he promised. So what do the onlooking, non-believing nations see when they see the holy, meticulous, precise justice and clean living and discipline of the church? What do? They praise them, they honor them, and they give them renown. And something's lacking today as we've dropped holiness from church and almost shy away from it. At the same time as that, we are a laughing stock to the wider world with our gushy gospel, which doesn't have a backbone. Deuteronomy Chapter 27. The altar at Mount Ebal. Then Moses and the leaders of Israel gave this charge to the people. Obey all these commands that I am giving you today. When you cross the Jordan River and enter the land the Lord your God is giving you, set up some large stones and coat them with plaster. Write this whole body of instruction on them when you cross the river to enter the land the Lord your God is giving you, a land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, promised you. When you cross the Jordan, set up these stones at Mount Ebal and coat them with plaster, as I am commanding you today. Then build an altar there to the Lord your God using natural, uncut stones. You must not shape the stones with an iron tool. Build the altar of uncut stones and use it to offer burnt offerings to the Lord your God. Also, sacrifice peace offerings on it and celebrate by feasting there before the Lord your God. You must clearly write all these instructions on the stones coated with plaster. Then Moses and the Levitical priests addressed all Israel as follows: O Israel, be quiet and listen. Today you have become the people of the Lord your God. You must obey the Lord your God by keeping all these commands and decrees that I am giving you today. You cross the Jordan River, the tribes of Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Joseph, and Benjamin must stand on Mount Gerizim to proclaim a blessing over the people. And the tribes of Reuben, Gad, Asher, Zebulun, Dan, and Naphtali must stand on Mount Ebal to proclaim a curse. Then the Levites will shout out to all the people of Israel, "Cursed is anyone who carves or casts an idol and secretly sets it up. These idols, the work of craftsmen, are detestable to the Lord." And all the people will reply, Amen. Cursed is anyone who dishonors father or mother. And all the people will reply, Amen. Cursed is anyone who steals property from a neighbor by moving a boundary marker. And all the people will reply, Amen. Cursed is anyone who leads the blind person astray on the road. And all the people will reply, Amen. Cursed is anyone who denies justice to foreigners, orphans, or widows. And all the people will reply, Amen. Cursed is anyone who has sexual intercourse with one of his father's wives, for he has violated his father. And all the people will reply, Amen. Cursed is anyone who has sexual intercourse with an animal. And all the people will reply, Amen. Cursed is anyone who has sexual intercourse with his sister, whether she is the daughter of his father or his mother. And all the people will reply, Amen. Cursed is anyone who has sexual intercourse with his mother-in-law. And all the people will reply, Amen. Cursed is anyone who attacks a neighbor in secret. And all the people will reply, Amen. Cursed is anyone who accepts payment to kill an innocent person. And all the people will reply, Amen. Cursed is anyone who does not affirm and obey the terms of these instructions. And all the people will reply, Amen. 4 minutes left to wade into the first bit of Deuteronomy chapter 28. Blessings for obedience in the life of the church. If you fully obey the Lord your God and carefully keep all his commands that I am giving you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations of the world. You will experience all these blessings if you obey the Lord. Your towns and your fields will be blessed. Your children and your crops will be blessed. The offspring of your herds and flocks will be blessed. Your fruit baskets and breadboards will be blessed. You will go, and wherever you go, and whatever you do, you will be blessed. The Lord will conquer your enemies when they attack you. They will attack you from one direction, but they will scatter you in seven from you. In seven. The Lord will guarantee a blessing on everything you do and will fill your storehouses with grain. The Lord your God will bless you in the land he is giving you. If you obey the commands of the Lord your God and walk in his ways, the Lord will establish you as his holy people, as he swore he would do. Then all the nations of the world will see that you are a people claimed by the Lord, and they will stand in awe of you. Then the Lord will give you prosperity in the land he swore to your ancestors to give you, blessing you with many children, numerous livestock, and abundant crops. The Lord will send rain at the proper time from his rich treasury in the heavens and will bless all the work that you do. You will lend to many nations, but you will never need to borrow from them. If you listen to these commands of the Lord your God that I am giving you today, and if you carefully obey them, the Lord will make you head and not the tail, and you will always be on top and never at the bottom. Isn't tons of that stuff exactly what Jesus did? Even made it rain when he wanted as well. Just showing what heaven's going to be like again. You must not turn away from any of the commands I am giving you today, nor follow after other gods and worship them. Verse 15. But if you refuse to listen to the Lord your God and do not obey all the commands and decrees I am giving you today, all these curses will come and overwhelm you. Your towns and your fields will be cursed. Your fruit and baskets and bread buds will be cursed. Your children and crops will be cursed. The offspring of your herds and flocks will be cursed. Wherever you go and whatever you do, it will be cursed. The Lord himself will send on you curses, confusion, and frustration in everything you do, until at last you are completely destroyed for doing evil and abandoning me. The Lord will afflict you with diseases until none of you are left in the land you are about to enter and occupy. The Lord will strike you with wasting diseases, fever, and inflammation, with scorching heat and drought, and with blight and mildew. These disasters will pursue you until you die. The skies above will be as unyielding as bronze, and the earth beneath will be as hard as iron. The Lord will change the rain that falls on your land. The powder and dust will pour from the sky until you are destroyed. What a recalibration for some of us that might be, to know that the Lord curses. Let us, as we go to sleep tonight, bless the Lord our God, cry out for mercy, ask for protection, and declare again, we believe and trust that the God of the Bible, this God, is our God. Perhaps for the first time, perhaps for the 1000th time. And those things that we've read which jar against us because of our cultural upbringing, may we bow the knee to the Lord our God. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. We meet again tomorrow. Will we crack the end of Deuteronomy tomorrow? I don't think so, but maybe. See you then, God willing.